Hello there. Today I'm going to be talking to you about tax foreclosed real property. Every state has a plan for how to deal with properties whose taxes have fallen into arrears. And they can only carry it so long, so eventually, usually after maybe 3 years or so, and many notices to property owners, the property goes to a foreclosure sale of some kind. The ones that I am familiar with are tax auctions, where a time is set for the auction, a list of properties is given out in advance, and there's plenty of time for potential buyers to investigate the properties. Um, but let me just tell you how you start. What are the steps? The first thing you want to do is to contact your local treasurer's office. Find out how they deal with tax land. Ask them if they have a list, and just get the protocol. Find out what the procedures are, and then they'll either email it to you or you can go by and pick it up at the treasurer's office. Once you have that list in hand, of course, you're going to peruse it and see if there's anything that really stands out to you, something that you really might be interested in. Once you have pinpointed the properties that interest you the most, then you want to make a trip to the assessor's office. At the assessor's office, you're going to ask them to find the properties for you on their maps and then make you a copy of a plat or an area that shows that property. And more than likely, they will draw the outline of the property for you on a map, and they're very helpful and answer any questions that you might have about it. Once you have that in hand, you want to let some time elapse between that time and when the auction takes place, because many of the properties will be redeemed during that time frame. People have until the auction, actually, I think up until the day of the auction or maybe the day before, to redeem their properties. So you want to let some time elapse, and it just gives you a pretty good indication as to whether or not they're going to redeem the property or whether the property is actually going to go to auction. And after a while, you'll check back with the county and get a new list that shows the properties that are still available for sale. And then you can pinpoint what you might be interested in. And then comes the investigation. And you'll want to drive, at least we did, drive out to see the property, see if you can find the property, and see if you can find uh, the corner posts if it has been surveyed, and most properties have been surveyed, and so that you get an idea of what you're actually buying if you're going to bid on a particular property. And once you have satisfied yourself that this is something you're really interested in, and maybe you'll find three or four that you're really interested in. And this could take you several days of investigation because it'll take some hunting to find them. They don't have addresses on them necessarily, especially if you're looking at vacant land. They won't have necessarily any addresses. Some will in subdivisions, for instance, if a lot is gone to foreclosure, then you'll find an address. But oftentimes, these properties are out in the country, and they might not even have a road to them, and they definitely most of the time won't have an address on them. So it'll take some investigation, but that's part of the fun process is actually finding the property and knowing that this is something that you'd really be interested in. Once you have done that, then you'll just have to wait and see if the property gets redeemed. So you'll come to the tax foreclosure sale, and then the bids will start, and off you go. Just to give you a little example of something that I have done. One time we wanted to go to an auction. The auction was in Wenatchee, Washington. It was, and they usually have these for some reason. They have them in the late fall. Um, And so the weather is a little bit unpredictable in the late fall, and especially in Washington State. So I lived on the west side. The property was in central Washington. I had a mountain pass that I had to go across to get to the treasurer's office and the courthouse where the auction would be held. And the roads were a little bit skimpy. They weren't skimpy with snow. They had plenty of snow, but they were a little sketchy, as my son would say. And so, but we made it okay. And we had lived several years in Montana, so we were used to bad roads. But anyway, we got there. But we were glad that the weather was inclement. And the reason we were glad is because a lot of people won't come if the weather is bad. The fewer people at the auction, the more likely you'll be able to get the property you're interested in at a reasonable price. So at this particular auction, the crowd was a little skimpy. And some of the people that were there to bid on specific lots, and then they were done. They'd get what they came after, and then they were leaving. So there wasn't a lot of competition, which we were very thankful for. We were bidding on, we wanted about 80 acres, and there were several lots that were all adjoining each other, not just lots, but parcels of land, like a 10-acre piece or a 15-acre piece or a 5-acre piece. Excuse me. And so we started bidding, and we were able to get a total of 80 acres for $5,000. And now that has been about 20 years ago or so, but still, even by today's standards, you'd still get property at a bargain at these sales. So we got this 80-acre piece for approximately $5,000. And what you're looking for when you first get your treasurer's report and what have you, you want to make sure that there aren't any liens against the property, especially liens from the IRS or state taxes, federal taxes, something like that. You don't want any liens like that. You can't fight with the IRS. They're going to win every time. So you don't want to get a property that has an IRS lien on it. So anyway, we found that the property that we bought was landlocked, as they call it, did not have an easement to it. So we began to look at adjacent property owners, and we found a man that was congenial, and we offered to take him to breakfast, and he accepted. And when we had breakfast with him, we told him what we were doing, and that we had purchased 80 acres, but that it was landlocked, and we needed an easement to that property. Now, FYI, most states, and I don't know of a state that doesn't do this, you can't deny a landowner access to their property. Now, somebody has to give them or has to sell them an easement. And, so it's an obligation. So when it all boils down to whether you're going to get it or not, you're going to get it, but you may have to pay for it. So we had breakfast with this lovely gentleman and spent some good time visiting with him. And he was very happy to sell us an easement, and he was very reasonable in his price. And so we got an easement to the property, and my husband, being a jack of all trades, was able to rent a cat and put the road in himself, which we saved quite a bundle doing that. So we've got $5,000 invested plus whatever the easement. I think the easement was about $1,200. So we've got $6,200 involved in it, plus the cat work and what have you. So less than $10,000. And in a few months, we were able to sell the property for $80,000. So we made almost $70,000 off that property. So you can see just with that one example how lucrative it can be if you persevere, do your homework, and really get out there and work at it. Now, here's something that's a little bit humorous. My husband went to a tax auction on Whidbey Island, and he thought, I'll just buy something today that's kind of what we call junk pieces, pieces that didn't look like you could put a house on it or anything like that, but just buy it and see what you can do with it. So he did. He paid $300 for this small parcel, and so when he got home, he was telling me about it. He said, I just bought this little parcel. I don't know what we'll do with it, but I thought it would be fun to have it and see. So the next day, the phone rang. It was an attorney from Seattle. The attorney said, I understand you bought a piece of property at a tax auction yesterday. My husband said, yes, we did. The attorney said, well, name your price. I have to have it back. And my husband was kind of taken aback by that. And he said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, that parcel that you bought has the water supply for that local housing development. So if I can't get that back from you, I am toast. He was just very honest about it. And so my husband said, well, that's too bad. I'm really sorry to hear about that. And so the attorney just says, name your price. Well, my husband and I are of the old school. You do things honorably and justly. And so my husband said, well, I don't want to price gouge you or anything. And I know you're between a rock and a hard place. So if you'll just triple my investment, uh, it's yours. And the attorney says, it's a deal. Done deal. The check is in the mail. And we were glad that we were the ones that bought the property, because there are those that would have taken advantage of him and would have, and he probably could afford it, but still that wasn't the point. The point was the principle involved. And so he got his land back, and we made a little extra money on our investment. And one other that I wanted to tell you about. Oh, I know. Um, I actually went to, my husband usually did most of this stuff. I'd go with him, but he'd do the bidding, and you know how that goes. But one time he was busy, and I thought, there's a tax auction coming up, and there's one piece that I've been looking at that I think that we could use. My husband would occasionally build a house and sell it. And so this was about an acre and a half of land, close to a highway, so there was easy access. And so I went to the auction, and nobody wanted to bid on it. I got it for $1,000. And so when I got home, I told my husband what I had. We went out, we took a look, because this was sight unseen. We hadn't seen this property. So we went out and we took a look at the property and realized that we could put a small house on the property. So he did. He put a three-bedroom, kind of like a starter home, on the property, and we put it up for sale. And I think we sold it for about 235 or so, and I think he only had about $60,000 invested in building materials for the house. So we did pretty good on that one as well. I give you these examples just so you can see what can be done. And you can make pretty good money doing this. It takes a little legwork. It takes reading some maps and being able to look at plats and that kind of thing, but that's easy to learn. Most people can do that fairly easily. And so it is a way that you can make some money, and you could actually make a little business doing that. We did this quite often. And there were many properties that we were able to buy and resell and be able to make a profit. So I hope this information has helped you. Just remember, contact your local treasurer. And then once you've got that information, you want to go to the assessor's office, find out where these properties are. And the treasurer's office will do a title search to see if there are any liens and so forth against the property. So just as long as you do your homework, you should be able to make a few extra dollars doing this. I do want to tell you about a property that we bought in central Washington near Lake Chelan, up in the mountains. We wanted a getaway for our family that we could bring our grandkids to, and that our children could come and enjoy. And so this 30 acres came up, and we were able to get it, and I think we were able to get it for about $10,000. And and it was not landlocked. It had an easement road that went right by it, which was good. But then my husband had to do some cat work on the property, putting roads in on the property. And we were going to build right up on top of a knoll. And up on this top, up on the knoll, uh, there was a 360-degree view of the valley, the canyons, and what have you. You could look down on residential area way down in the valley near the river. It was absolutely jaw-dropping view. It was wonderful view property. And so we put the road up there. We did not build up on the top as long as we had the property, but we certainly made us a little place to go up there and sit, and we could enjoy the view. But we did build down in a little valley area where it was a little, we put in a road that went down. It was all tucked in with beautiful tall trees, and you could walk just a few feet over and look down into the valley and the gorgeous view. We built a little uh, log cabin, and I'll put a picture up for you. And it was just it was like a little trapper's cabin, actually. And my husband built a corral for when we'd bring our horses over. My husband built a zip line for the grandkids, and they enjoyed that tremendously. And we put up various things that the grandkids would enjoy. We put up a a large target that was made out of the end of a tree stump that my grandkids could throw axes and stick in. So we made it a regular little family get away, and we had purchased a covered wagon at some point. So we transported that over and put it out in front of the cabin. My husband built a huge picnic table out of uh, splitting small trees in half, and what have you. And we cooked outdoors out there, wore our cowboy hats and put on our cowboy aprons, and would have guests over and our family over for wonderful cookouts. And I'll put some photographs up here to just show you that little place because it was really special. And we kept it for many years, and our grandkids enjoyed it, and we did too. And but our real reason for buying tax land was to have income from them when we sold them later on in life, when we needed a little extra money and what have you. So most of our properties have been sold as we've aged, and as we've needed a little extra for our retirement. But it was a wonderful place, and we bought that property for, like I said, $10,000. But when we sold it, we sold it for $130,000. So um, we wouldn't have been able to do all of that. We were not wealthy people. If we hadn't bought tax land, we could not have done that kind of thing. So it was a real um, blessing for us, as well as it was profitable for us. So that's another example of what we have done with tax land. One other property that I want to tell you about that is not tax land, but it brings me to another subject besides purchasing tax land, is buying distressed properties. Properties that most people would not want, and turning them into a desirable property. The example I'm going to give you, and I will put a photograph up of it as well, is a piece of property we bought on Lake Chelan. Now, Lake Chelan was our favorite place in the world, and we'd bring our boat over and cruise the lake. And so we found this property that was for sale. It was waterfront across from 25 Mile Creek. And actually, this little place has become kind of famous. Someone, I have an airplane going over, so I'll stop. So the little property on Lake Chelan that we bought, which would have been to most people would have been undesirable. In fact, my parents came to visit. We took them over and showed them the property before we had done anything to it and showed them what we had bought. And my dad looked at that property and it was steep and what have you. And he said, "You couldn't give me this property." He did not have the vision that we had. So, anyway, we started off by, of course, building a dock. We had to have a place to dock our boat when we came in there. And we got that all done. And then my husband, we decided where we wanted to build a little cabin. And then my husband began making the trail up to where it was going to be. And it was at the base of a beautiful fir tree. And we decided that because we were building a little castle turret, and the reason we decided to build a castle turret was because there are so many rocks at this place. There were rocks everywhere. And it just stood to reason that there's your building material. So we decided to do that, build a round castle turret. And it looked just like a little castle turret when we got done. So we named that place Monarch because of two things: the theme of the castle, but also because of the monarch butterfly. There were quite a few of the monarch butterflies there around the cabin. So, anyway, we paid $13,000 for that lakeshore property. I think I told you. All right, we built it. It was a getaway for my husband from his regular job. It was a stress reducer. He would come over there and work and work and work, and he would feel so much better when we went back home. I would go over there and float on the lake and feel so much better when I went back home. But anyway, a few years went by and we weren't using it much anymore. In fact, we had moved to Montana. And so I put it up for sale, and we were able to sell it for about $130,000. Keep in mind, we'd paid 13 for it. And it wasn't a tax auction either. This was just an outright sale. So we paid $13,000 for it. And the only investment we had in it was the windows, the roofing, the bags of concrete, and a few floorboards for the two floors, which were not very big because it's only about 12 feet across. So the floorboards, flooring for upstairs and downstairs, and the little deck around, and the deck down by the water. That's all we had in it. It didn't have electricity because electricity wasn't over there. We used a generator, so we put a few things in, and we had some cupboards and what have you. But we didn't have a lot of money in it. It was just a labor of love for my husband, and I love playing in the water. So it was worth the investment for me, particularly. So, anyway, I hope that this gives you a little idea of what you can do with a little effort and just searching for that right little piece of property. Now, if you're my age, or anywhere near my age, you're not going to go out and build a castle turret. But you could still invest in tax land. I like to drive. I like to go places. I like to walk. So I can get out and I could find a piece of property and, you know, then put it on the market for sale. That's easy to do. So you don't have to improve on it. Just find the property, pay whatever the treasurer wants. It's yours, and you can put it up for sale. Well, good luck with this. I hope it works for you as well as it worked for us. See you next time.